Okay, that's enough fooling around. Let's get started. Welcome. This is session number 115 of Kevin Reed's Course in Miracles. Session 115. We are ending chapter 14, entitled Teaching for Truth. And this is section 11, Roman numeral 11, entitled The Test for Truth, on page 296 in the text. I think that's enough categories. So let us begin, see what happens here. The test for truth. Paragraph 1. Yet the essential thing is learning that you do not know. Knowledge is power, and all power is of God. You who have tried to keep power for yourself have lost it. You still have the power, but you have interposed so much between it and your awareness of it that you cannot use it. Everything you have taught yourself has made your power more and more obscure to you. You know not what it is, nor where. You have made a semblance of power and a show of strength so pitiful that it must fail you. For power is not a seeming strength, and truth is beyond semblance of any kind. Yet all that stands between you and the power of God in you is but your learning of the false and your attempts to undo the true. All righty. So Jesus, gives us the bottom line here. The essential thing in learning is that you do not know. Okay? I mean, you wouldn't go to a class where you say, well, I already know this. Why would you go? So the essential thing to learning is that you do not know. All right? We have to practice a little humility because we certainly think we know. We know what's going on. We know how to handle ourselves in this world. Some of you do, anyway. But that's it. He says, you think you know. He says, and knowledge is power. He goes, and all power is from God. That's right. You've tried to keep the power for yourself, and you lost it. All right. In other words, we tried to become individuals. We tried to say, I can be separate from the oneness, and yet maintain all the gifts, maintain all the power that God has. Right? So he says, you have tried to keep the power for yourself, have lost it. He says, you still have it, but you've put so much in between you and the awareness of it, right, that you can't use it. He says, you just put so many obstacles in between yourself and the awareness of who you truly are that you can't tap into, or you can't use the power of God. Right? And the power of God, it's not, we're not talking about, changing the course of mighty rivers and, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. Right? We're not talking about that. We're talking about the power of knowing, of understanding, and extending all that is. Right? That's the power of God. Here in this experience, that extension would be, a reflection of that extension would be forgiveness. taking back the projections of guilt, stopping those projections of guilt, and allowing an understanding of the other, right? Realizing that I and the other really have the same needs. We have the same need to awaken from this dream. Right? We have the same need to awaken from this dream. This whole experience of ego on all its levels. Okay. So he says, everything you've taught yourself has made your power more and more obscure to you. Right? And as first thing we taught ourselves was that we're no longer part of the oneness. Next thing we taught ourselves was, oh my God, what did I do? You're guilty of something. You're guilty of destroying the oneness. Right? Then you project that anger of not being recognized by God. You project that anger onto God. Now he's angry, he's going to get you. Right? And that's always the bottom line of our existence here. And we project, we make up this, we miscreate, as Dr. Wapnick's wife Gloria used to say, we miscreate this universe, this world, this whole experience. So everything we've taught ourselves obscures more and more who we really are. Right? You can't see it. Right? It's obscure. Okay. He says you don't know what the power is, and you don't know where it is. You know not what it is, nor where. You have made a semblance of power and a show of strength so pitiful that it must fail you. All right? We have semblances of power in our human experiences. I mean, throughout the human existence, there's always someone that rises to power. He says that's a semblance of power. It looks like power. Right? It has like the face of power. Right? But he says it's so pitiful that it has to fail you. And all these big semblances of power, they ultimately do fail. I mean, you look any way you want for a semblance of power. You know, let's go into archaeology, the great Aztec empires, the Inca Empire, right? The Roman Empire, the Greeks, Alexander the Great, you know, conquering most of the known world. You know, the Romans with all their power. He says it's a show of strength that's so pitiful it must fail you. So all these displays of power, they ultimately decline and fail. Right? I mean, the jungles have grown over the Incas and the Aztecs, and you know, no doubt they had some marvelous things in their culture, and the ancient Egyptians had wonderful awarenesses, right? Then they get wiped out by the Romans, and so it goes. You know, all these semblances of power, and even the semblances of power that we have now. You know, they're destined to decline, to put it nicely. All right? He says because it's a semblance of power. It's not really who you are. All right? He said you're all. It's like you're all making believe. I'm, you know, including myself. You know, you're making believe. For power is not a seeming strength, and truth is beyond semblance of any kind. All right, so the power the awareness, the knowledge, he says that's not a make-believe, that's not a seeming strength. It is the strength. And the truth is beyond anything that you can imitate. He says, you can't make up something that looks like truth, right? Which is what we do here in a very chaotic world. Later on in the book we'll get to the laws of chaos, and I believe the first one will be that the truth is different for everyone. Well, that's kind of chaotic. My truth says that, this is green, and your truth says this is red. And there we go. Never the twain shall meet, as the saying goes. Right? He says, for power is not a seeming strength, and truth is beyond semblance of any kind. Yet all that stands between you and the power of God in you, is but your learning of the false. Right? And learning of your attempts to undo the true. Right? So in other words, the only thing that stands between us and the awareness of who we truly are, stands between us and the power of God, is looking at what we've put in between ourselves here and that knowledge. Right? We have to learn. We have to learn about what's false and what's true. All right? And everything about the ego is false, starting with the idea that I left the mind of God. I left the oneness. That's the foundation of all the other things that are not true. So we have to look. The idea is to look at these things. All right? We have to learn of the false. All right? So we learn about the false by looking at it. You notice it when it comes up. Right? What is it that I believe about this? You could stop yourself at any time during the day and just to say, what was I thinking about? Hone in on that thought, And then, you could always ask, how can I see this correctly? How can I see the truth? So what we do, we look with that, we go inside, so to speak, and we look at the world around us with the love around us. We symbolize it with Jesus and Holy Spirit. Right? You can symbolize it with whatever symbol you like, whatever something symbolizes love beyond this world, outside of this tangible world. And let that love surround you, and then look and separate the false from the true. All right? This way, with the love around you, you're not afraid to look. All right? You won't be afraid to look at some of the things that you might find disturbing about the world or about yourself. And ultimately, it's about yourself. Okay? But don't let that stop you, because the love really makes you invulnerable to that nonsense. That's how we look at the world, and we separate the false from the true. All right? And we look at our attempts to undo the truth. And the truth is that we are the offspring of God. The truth is that we reside, so to speak, in the mind of God. All right? And we try to undo that. Okay? I mean, I chuckle when I say that, but some of the undoing is very stressful, and the effects of that attempt to undo it are hard. So we need to look at all that. Okay? Paragraph 2. Be willing then for all of it to be undone, and be glad that you are not bound to it forever. For you have taught yourself how to imprison the Son of God, a lesson so unthinkable that only the insane, in deepest sleep, could even dream of it. Can God learn how not to be God? And can his Son, given all power by him, learn to be powerless? What have you taught yourself that you can possibly prefer to keep in place of what you have and what you are? This is Jesus following up on that first paragraph by saying, be willing to have all this nonsense undone. Right? All this craziness that begins with the thought that I separated from my Father. And then, boom, we teach ourselves how to maneuver through the world. He says, be willing then for all of it to be undone. And he says, and be glad that you're not bound to it forever. Can you imagine that thought that says, this is it? You know, this is it. The world, my life, right? That song from the 70s, Is That All There Is? That was, as I said once before, kind of a depressing song. There was a hopelessness to it. And there's a hopelessness to this existence in this world, actually. No matter how much power you think you have, right, that power will subside at some point in the journey. Right, and you'll get in touch with the absolute insanity of this existence. And he says, so be glad that you're not bound to this forever. This is not the end-all and be-all of things. All right? He says, be happy about that. All right? And be willing that it all be undone. And the way we undo it is, once again, by looking with love around you, the awareness of love around you, a non-judgmental presence around you. And we just look and we say, well, what is this all about? Can you help me see this correctly? Just that willingness, that active willingness to do that. All right? Be willing that it all be undone. All right? He says, because you've taught yourself how to imprison the Son of God. So we taught ourselves how to imprison who you truly are. We've taught ourselves to imprison the Son of God. All right? Now, this is not, we're not pointing the finger at you, telling you that you're going to be condemned to eternal damnation and all that. The ego would love that thought, all right, just to keep you locked in to guilt. The idea that this whole thing is lends itself to being undone. Be joyful about that. Be glad. Right? Because we do take things seriously. I mean, there's no escaping it in this world. And so we can ask, help me to see this correctly. All right? Because I've imprisoned the Son of God. All right? I want to set him free. Come on. You have taught yourself how to imprison the Son of God. By saying, I am not part of the oneness. I'm an individual. Right? So, he says, that's a lesson that's so unthinkable. Right? He says, it's just so crazy that only the insane in deepest sleep could dream about it. Well, Thank you very much. Right? He says it's just such a crazy thought that you could imprison who you really are. That you could cut it off. Say, that's not me anymore. Right? He says, can God learn how not to be God? Right? And can his son, given all power by him, learn to be powerless? Right? He says, you're teaching yourself silly things. He says, you are the offspring of God with all the power of God. The power to extend totality. He says, what you've taught yourself, he says, what have you taught yourself that you can possibly prefer to keep? All right. Would you prefer to stay here? All right. In place of what you have and what you are. You have everything and you are everything. See, words are so limiting that it's hard to describe the totality, the spaciousness, the power of that awareness. But do you prefer to stay here? All right. With all the things that go on here in this world, things that scare us, things that make us angry, things that are painful physically, and seems like it never ends sometimes, right? But it does when we decide, with the love around us, to undo things. Help me undo this. Help me undo this thought that I had. Paragraph 3. Atonement teaches you how to escape forever from everything that you have taught yourself in the past by showing you only what you are now. Learning has been accomplished before its effects are manifest. Learning is therefore in the past, but its influence determines the present by giving it whatever meaning it holds for you. Your learning gives the present no meaning at all. Nothing you have ever learned can help you understand the present or teach you how to undo the past. Your past is what you have taught yourself. Let it all go. Do not attempt to understand any event or anything or anyone in its light, for the darkness in which you try to see can only obscure. Put no confidence at all in darkness to illuminate your understanding, for if you do, you contradict the light, and thereby think you see the darkness. Yet darkness cannot be seen, for it is nothing more than a condition in which seeing becomes impossible. Right. I mean, it's just so beautifully written. It lights a fire in the mind and the thoughts. Right. What he's basically saying, I mean, breaking it down like this, sometimes it does a disservice to the writing and the message, actually, but because it's like breaking down a symphony, and saying, oh well, here's these chords and here's those, and do you notice, the shift and the moderato and the allegro and the legatos, and right? We break it down, but basically what he's saying here, just reiterating that it's just so beautifully put together. Right? But what he's saying is captured in that first sentence. The atonement teaches you how to escape forever from everything you have taught yourself in the past. All right, so everything we've taught ourselves in the past, beginning with, I'm separated from the mind of God. Then everything I've taught myself to cope with that. Is the atonement teaches you how to escape from all that. And once again, the atonement is the idea that you never left the mind of God. You are as innocent as the moment you were created. That has never changed. So letting that thought arise in your mind, right, preparing the way for it, is the atonement will undo all this nonsense. Okay? By showing you only what you are now, right, in this present moment. He says, we look at everything through the lens of the past, and it obscures the now. It obscures who you really are. I mean, so many wonderful spiritual paths point to that notion that this is the only time there is now. And in that now is the awareness of who you really are, right? Your Buddha nature, your Christ consciousness, right? You know, that spaciousness, right? Jesus would refer to it as the kingdom of heaven. Right? It's all there in the present moment, which the past does its best to obscure. Okay? This is nothing you've ever learned can help you understand the present. Or teach you how to undo the past. Right? Your past is what you have taught yourself. Just let it all go. Just put it all down. Reminds me of what the words in the Course, at one point Jesus even says, forget this world, all right? So let it all go. Forget this course. Put that down and come with wholly empty hands unto your God in that present moment. Just let it all go. Don't even worry about learning the words of the Course and the concepts and this and that. He says, just put everything down and come with those open arms, right, with those empty hands to your God, to the source, to the spaciousness, right, to that present moment of who you, to become aware of who you are. He says, just let everything go. Don't attempt to understand any event or anything or anyone in the light of the past. And light is in quotes. Right? Because he says that the past is darkness, and it just obscures things. Put no confidence at all in darkness to illuminate your understanding. Right? He says that the past, and remember, when you read that word, the past, where really what's in the past is the decision to believe I've separated from God. And then the rest rolls out, the histories and all that. All right. He says, none of that. Don't rely on any of that. You know, one example of coming up for me right now is that I have an interaction with a person, And that person bears a remarkable resemblance to someone I used to know. And that person I used to know, I really disliked them. Right? They did something to me. Now I'm interacting with this person who looks and sounds like this guy. Now I'm reacting through that filter. You know, that's one way of looking at it. But the past will filter. You look through the past at everything. You know, with as you grow older, your experiences and relationships. Well, all people are like this. You know, all these people are like that, all these people are like that. You know, that's part of it. It keeps us separated, keeps us unaware of the fact that we all have the same need. We all have the same need to awaken from this dream. Alrighty then. Just let it all go. If you could do that for a moment, you would learn to like it. Right. And as they say, if we like it, we want more. Paragraph 4. You who have not yet brought all the darkness you have taught yourself into the light in you can hardly judge the truth and value of this course. Yet God did not abandon you. And so you have another lesson sent from him, already learned for every child of light by him to whom God gave it. This lesson shines with God's glory, for in it lies his power, which he shares so gladly with his Son. Learn of his happiness, which is yours. But to accomplish this, all your dark lessons must be brought willingly to truth and joyously laid down by hands open to receive, not closed to take. Every dark lesson that you bring to him who teaches light, he will accept from you, because you do not want it, and he will gladly exchange each one for the bright lesson he has learned for you. Never believe that any lesson you have learned apart from him means anything. Okay. So once again, Jesus is telling us you really don't know, all right? Because you have not yet brought all your darkness to the light that's in you, all right? You've not brought all those scraps. You still think, something in this world is worth having or believing in or doing, or all right? There's something here that still attracts us. What Jesus is saying, he says, let me teach you. All right? Just don't assume that you know. All right? Let me teach you. And it's a great habit to get into, a great exercise to imagine yourself in conversation with Jesus. As if he's walking with you through this world, right? Oh, look at that. What is that? What is that all about? Let him teach you. Right? I really think this about that person. What is that all about? Can you help me? I'd rather be peaceful. Can you help me see through your eyes? Jesus is the one who's learned the lesson and he's bringing it to us. Okay? The lesson is that you're not separated from God. And a big lesson that he taught us was that death is nothing. Right? He says, I'm still with you. He says, what happened? The body's gone. So what? That didn't stop me. He goes, all right. So, learn of his happiness, which is yours. Right? But to accomplish this, all your dark lessons must be brought willingly to truth and joyously laid down by hands open to receive, not to take. Right? And that's the constant repetition of that message. Bring all your dark lessons, all the things that you've taught yourself, all the things you think about others, right? All the projections. Even if you're projecting onto yourself, that's no better. You know, I'm a horrible person. You know, I'm a loser, I'm all this. Bring those to Jesus. Right? Ask him, how do I see this correctly? How do I see myself correctly? Okay. Let's look at paragraph 5. You have one test, as sure as God, by which to recognize if what you learned is true. If you are wholly free of fear of any kind, and if all those who meet or even think of you share in your perfect peace, then you can be sure that you have learned God's lesson and not your own. Unless all this is true, there are dark lessons in your mind that hurt and hinder you and everyone around you. The absence of perfect peace means but one thing. You think you do not will for God's Son what his Father wills for him. Every dark lesson teaches this in one form or another, and each bright lesson with which the Holy Spirit will replace the dark ones you do not accept teaches you that you will with the Father and his Son. Right? So you have the same will as the Father and the Son. And he says you have one test for everything to recognize if what you learned is true. Are you peaceful? Are you peaceful? Are you wholly free of fear of any kind? And are all those who meet or even think of you share in your peace? So, I mean, that's another thing. During the day, you can just walk, you know, whatever you're doing. All right, walk around. You could stop and just check, am I peaceful? Am I totally free of fear? And if not, that's a good opportunity to say, you know, think, well, what am I afraid of? Why am I nervous? Why am I angry? Why am I this, that? Why am I not peaceful? And then go to your friend. Say, hey, can you help me with this? How can I be peaceful? I really want to be peaceful. I'd rather walk through my day in a state of peace. Right? And it is possible. I mean, if it wasn't possible, this book wouldn't be here. Right? I mean, it's not only possible, it's inevitable. Right? Sooner or later, at some point along the hologram of time here, right, we will let it all go. We will sit in that present moment, and we will remember who we are and our relationship to our Creator. You will. It's inevitable. Right? Just for some of us, it takes a little longer, that's all. because we still think there's something here that's worthwhile. That's all. Doesn't make you bad. You know, as Joey DeCruz used to say, it doesn't make you bad. Just makes you miserable. Makes you a part of this world, which is a rather difficult place to be, unless you're walking through it in peace. Then it's not a problem, because you walk through the world in peace, and all those who even think of you share in that peace. Isn't that a nice state to attain? Okay. Paragraph 6. Do not be concerned about how you can learn a lesson so completely different from everything that you have taught yourself. Right? Don't be concerned about that. Tell yourself, oh, it's so hard, I'll never do it. All right? Don't be concerned about how you can learn a lesson so completely different from everything that you have taught yourself. How would you know? Your part is very simple. You need only recognize that everything you learned you do not want. Ask to be taught, and do not use your experiences to confirm what you have learned. When your peace is threatened or disturbed in any way, say to yourself, I do not know what anything, including this, means, and so I do not know how to respond, and I will not use my own past learning as the light to guide me now. All right? So in all experiences, okay, whenever your peace is threatened, you could just remember, I don't know what to do. I don't know anything about this, actually, and I don't want to judge it, or I don't want to know what it is through the filter of my past. All right? I want to let that go. I want to drop that. I don't want to use my own past learning to tell me what's going on. This is when you don't feel peaceful. That's a good thought to let it rise up in your head. Right? I don't know why I'm not peaceful. Right? I don't understand it. All I know is that I'm not peaceful. And then we go inside and we ask, okay? And we ask Jesus, the Holy Spirit, whatever symbol we want to use. Right? By this refusal to attempt to teach yourself what you do not know, the guide whom God has given you will speak to you. Right? So when we say, I really don't know, but I would like to be peaceful. Right? He says, the guide whom God has given you will take the place, take his rightful place, will speak to you. Right? He will take his rightful place in your awareness the instant you abandon it and offer it to him. So the instant I abandon my attempt to figure stuff out through the past, Jesus, the Holy Spirit will speak to me. They will tell me. They will show me what's going on. In other words, I'll understand what's happening, and I'll be peaceful. So, paragraph 7, you cannot be your guide to miracles, for it is you who made them necessary. Okay? And because you did, the means on which you can depend for miracles has been provided for you. God's Son can make no needs his Father will not meet, if he but turn to him, ever so little. Yet, He cannot compel his Son to turn to him and remain himself. It is impossible that God lose his identity, for if he did, you would lose yours. And being yours, he cannot change himself, for your identity is changeless. The miracle acknowledges his changelessness by seeing his Son as he always was, and not as he would make himself. The miracle brings the effects that only guiltlessness can bring, and thus establishes the fact that guiltlessness must be. All right? Repetition of ideas, but just in different poetic words. All right? He says, you can't be the one to figure out, what does peace look like? What does love look like? He says, you can't figure it out because you made the miracle necessary. All right? You made the question necessary. What does it look like? All right? And because you did, all right, because you made it necessary by thinking that you're separated from God, you made it necessary for the correction. And because you made it necessary, God gave you the correction. The correction came with us because the correction's always been in your mind. All right? And he just reassures us that God's Son can make no needs that his Father will not meet if he but turn to him ever so little. Ever so little. A little willingness, and I believe it was just last session when he spoke about the atonement. He says, the atonement is so powerful, all you need to do is just whisper to it. All right, hey, could you help me? All right, I'm willing to see correctly. All right, all you need to do is whisper to it. You just have to just turn to God ever so little. Okay? And God, he says, God can't make you do it. All right? I mean, we have to get to the point where, Jesus at one point says, it doesn't have to be painful, but it usually is. In one way or another, physically, emotionally, spiritually. All right? We get to the point where it's like, oh my God, I can't take it anymore. Right? So he says that God can't make us turn back to him. All right? And he can't do it and remain himself. The choice has to be mine. God can't come in and flip a switch. All right? Because otherwise he wouldn't be God, he says here. And it's impossible that God loses identity. All right? For if he did, you would lose yours. Just repeating the fact that you are the same as God. All right? The only difference is that you did not create yourself. You are an extension of all that is. Okay? So the miracle, that correction, right? The correction of error, right? What I'm seeing something incorrectly. It's a mistake I'm making, but I'm willing to have it corrected. So that's the miracle. Help me to see correctly. The miracle brings the effects that only guiltlessness can bring. All right. And it's the effects of guiltlessness. You understand, you love, you want to share that. You want everyone to have the understanding. You bring it with you. All right. Those are the effects of guiltlessness. And thus establishes the fact that guiltlessness must be. All right. Paragraph 8. How can you, so firmly bound to guilt and committed so, how can you, so firmly bound to guilt and committed so to remain, establish for yourself your guiltlessness? This is impossible. But be sure that you are willing to acknowledge that it is impossible. It is only because you think that you can run some little part or deal with certain aspects of your life alone that the guidance of the Holy Spirit is limited. Thus would you make him undependable and use this fancied and undependability as an excuse for keeping certain dark lessons from him. And by so limiting the guidance that you would accept, you are unable to depend on miracles to answer all your problems for you. Very, once again, so beautifully written, but he says, he's talking to our decision maker, right? How can you, who's so firmly bound to guilt and committed to remain that way, right? How can you establish your innocence? Right? How can you establish for yourself your guiltlessness? Right? Because we've made that choice to be guilty, to be separate. So he says, so how can you establish your own guiltlessness? Right? He says, be sure you're willing to acknowledge that it is impossible. All right? So you're not in charge. We're not in charge. All right? We have to give up the steering wheel after a while. Say, okay, Jesus, you drive. All right? He says, you can't establish your guiltlessness because so far all you've established was your guilt. We need help with the correction, in other words. Right? And he says, you still think that there's some parts of your existence that you can take control of and you can handle. And you're still parts of your existence and your thinking that for some reason or other you won't bring it to the light. All right? He says, this way you're limiting the Holy Spirit. And when we limit the Holy Spirit, we make him undependable, he says, right? He says, by limiting the guidance that you would accept, so we're limiting the guidance that we would accept. Because I think, oh, okay, I'll bring this problem, not that one. This one, I'm a little embarrassed. I don't want to bring this one. I'll handle it. All right. He says, you're making things difficult for yourself here. He says, by limiting the guidance that you would accept, you are unable to depend on miracles. You're unable to depend on the correction to answer all your problems for you. All right? Just bring them all. Bring all the problems. There's nothing you would keep. Paragraph 9. Do you think that what the Holy Spirit would have you give, he would withhold from you? He said, you have no problems that he cannot solve by offering you a miracle. Miracles are for you. And every fear or pain or trial you have has been undone. He has brought all of them to light, having accepted them instead of you and recognized they never were. There are no dark lessons he has not already lightened for you. The lessons you would teach yourself, he has corrected already. They do not exist in his mind at all. For the past binds him not, and therefore binds not you. He does not see time as you do, and each miracle he offers you corrects your use of time and makes it his. Right? So in this paragraph, you could see that if you're following along, you go, what? It's already been corrected? What is? So in other words, he's already changing the concept of time here. Right? At one point, Jesus will tell you just reviewing things that have gone by. Right? And I believe it was Socrates came up with the thought that all learning was remembering. We were on a path of remembering truth. So all learning along the way was just remembering who you really are. Okay? And who you really are continues always, no matter what we're dreaming. Right? You're at home in God dreaming of exile. So who you really are continues, never stops. Okay? This is what he's talking about when he says the mistakes have already been corrected. Everything's been corrected already. Right? It's like you're living in the tail of a comet. Right? The comet's gone by already. You're existing in the wake of the ferry boat. You're existing in the chemtrails. Oh my God. All right, miracles are for you, and every fear or pain or trial you have has been undone. It's all been undone already. Okay? In the instant it was thought it was undone, in the instant I thought I could separate, it was undone. The correction was made. Right. It's just that I chose to believe otherwise. Okay. He says, there are no dark lessons he has not already lightened for you. Right. And you say, what is he talking about? Right. They do not exist in his mind at all. Right. For the past binds him not. He does not see time as you do. And each miracle he offers you corrects your use of time and makes it his. Each correction we make brings us closer to the awareness that time is also an illusion. Right? There is always only right now. Brings us closer to that awareness. Excuse me. So everything's been undone already. We're just living in the memory. All right? Don't let that boggle your mind. Continue to bring your thoughts to Jesus or Holy Spirit and ask for the correction. As he says, just turn ever so little to God. Whisper to the atonement. Help me to see correctly. Right? And don't worry about time. You'll come to know what time is all about. All right? Paragraph 10. He who has freed you from the past would teach you you are free of it. He would but have you accept his accomplishments as yours, because he did them for you. And because he did, they are yours. He has made you free of what you made. You can deny him, but you cannot call on him in vain. He always gives his gifts in place of yours. He would establish his bright teaching so firmly in your mind that no dark lesson of guilt can abide in what he has established as holy by his presence. Thank God that he is there and works through you, and all his works are yours. He offers you a miracle with every one you let him do through you. Okay. He who has freed you from the past would teach you you are free of it. All right. You know, Jesus as the embodiment of the Holy Spirit, the Holy Spirit being the memory of who you truly are. Jesus is a reflection of who you truly are. Right? These symbols would teach you that you're free of the past. You're not guilty. Right? You're just not guilty. You're free of all the histories of everything. Right? He would but have you accept his accomplishments as yours, because he did them for you. And Jesus at one point says, you know, I remembered who I was. And that's what he means. He remembered for you, because there's only one mind. Right? He remembered for you. He has made you free of what you made. All right? So thank God that he's there in the mind, and he works through you. Be grateful for that. It's a joyous thought. And all his works are yours. He offers you a miracle with every one you let him do through you. Just another way of saying, what I offer, I receive. Right? I offer innocence to the other. I receive it. Right? And it just works through me. Right? I'm willing to see the innocence. Let's put it that way. I'm willing to see the innocence in the other. I get the gift also. Okay? Paragraph 11. God's Son will always be indivisible. As we are held as one in God, so do we learn as one in him. God's teacher is as like to his Creator as is his Son. And through his teacher does God proclaim his oneness and his Son's. Listen in silence. Do not raise your voice against him. For he teaches the miracle of oneness, and before his lesson division disappears. Teach like him here, and you will remember that you have always created like your Father. The miracle of creation has never ceased, having the holy stamp of immortality upon it. This is the will of God for all creation, and all creation joins in willing this. Right? So God's Son will always be indivisible. There are no fragments. Right? There's only the one mind. As we are held as one in God, so do we learn as one in him. In him. God's teacher is as like to his Creator as is his Son. Right? So God's teacher, Holy Spirit, Jesus, is as like to his Creator as you are. All right? There's no differences. Right? The only difference is that we don't know it. But just because we don't know it doesn't mean that it's not true. So there are no differences between us and Jesus and God, okay? Or us and the Holy Spirit. He says, listen in silence and do not raise your voice against him. Listen in silence. Come to that stately calm within. what comes up for me is that, you come inside, and ultimately, the question is, who am I? Right? Listen in silence. Okay? And do not raise your voice against him. Right? Do not say, no, that's not who I am. I'm an individual. Right? For he teaches the miracle of oneness. Right? And when that lesson arises, right, all division disappears. Right? So listen in silence. Look for the oneness. Wait for the oneness to rise. Right? And he says, teach like him here. Right? Remember, this is the end of the chapter called Teaching for Truth. So teach as the Holy Spirit would. Teach as Jesus would. Okay? Teach like him here. In other words, allow innocence and love to work through you. Okay? And you will remember that you have always created like your Father. You have always extended everyone or everything everywhere. Okay? Because he teaches the miracle of oneness. All right, this is the will of God for all creation. All right, and all creation joins in willing this. The will of God is for all creation, the oneness. Paragraph 12. Those who remember always that they know nothing and who have become willing to learn everything will learn it. But whenever they trust themselves, they will not learn. They have destroyed their motivation for learning by thinking they already know. Think not you understand anything until you pass the test of perfect peace. For peace and understanding go together and never can be found alone. Each brings the other with it. For it is the law of God that they not be separated. They are cause and effect each to the other. So where one is absent, the other cannot be. Those who remember always that they know nothing and who have become willing to learn everything will learn it. All right? It's a matter of show me. Show me. What does love look like in this situation? I don't know. I'm willing to learn. Help me to see correctly. All right? I don't know what's correct in this situation. All right? And I don't want to use the past to make my decisions. So help me. Help me to see correctly. All right? So peace and understanding go together. Right? When I want to see through the eyes of peace, I will understand the situation. I will understand what's going on. Okay? And in that, there's the peace. All right? And ultimately, Jesus says, you will understand and you will love it. All right? You'll love the present moment. Only those, paragraph 13, only those who recognize they cannot know unless the effects of understanding are with them can really learn at all. For this, it must be peace they want and nothing else. Whenever you think you know, peace will depart from you because you have abandoned the teacher of peace. Right? Whenever you fully realize that you know not, peace will return, for you will have invited him to do so by abandoning the ego on behalf of him. Call not upon the ego for anything. It is only this that you need to know, or only this that you need to do. The Holy Spirit will, of himself, fill every mind that so makes room for him. All right. So whenever we go about our daily business and we think we know what we're doing, His peace will abandon you. All right. Well, or you won't be aware of peace. Let's put it that way. All right. Let's see. Whenever you think you know, peace will depart from you. He says, that's it. Because you have abandoned the teacher of peace. Okay. Whenever you fully realize that you know not, peace will return. All right? And you realize that you don't know when you say, help me to see correctly. I'm willing not to know what to do in this situation, or what to say, or what to think. All right? So he says, don't call upon the ego for anything. All right? It's only the truth that you need. It's only the Holy Spirit. Be willing not to know, and the Holy Spirit will fill up that space in the mind. All right, paragraph 14, once again. If you want peace, you must abandon the teacher of attack. The teacher of peace will never abandon you. You can desert him, but he will never reciprocate, for his faith in you is his understanding. It is as firm as is his faith in his Creator. He knows that faith in his Creator must encompass faith in his creation. In this consistency lies his holiness, which he cannot abandon, for it is not his will to do so. With your perfection ever in his sight, he gives the gift of peace to everyone who perceives the need for peace and who would have it. Make way for peace, and it will come. For understanding is in you, and from it peace must come. Okay? It says you can turn your back on peace, but peace will never turn its back on you. Okay? Make way for peace, and it will come. Right? It's just another way of reiterating what he's been saying in this section is lay down that knowing, lay down that idea that you know what's happening. Right? Just let it go. Be willing to have the truth arise. Right? And it will come. For understanding is in you. It's in you already. We just have to get rid of the obstacles. And from that understanding, peace must come. 15. The power of God from which they both arise is yours as surely as it is his. You think you know him not, only because alone it is impossible to know him. Yet, seeing the mighty works that he will do through you, and you must be convinced you did them through him. It is impossible to deny the source of effects so powerful they could not be of you. Leave room for him, and you will find yourself so filled with power that nothing will prevail against your peace. And this will be the test by which you recognize that you have understood. Okay? You will be peaceful, and you will recognize that you understood what was being said. Okay. He says, you think you don't know God, all right? Only because you think you're alone. And when you're alone, it's impossible to know him. So we join with Holy Spirit, with Jesus. We're no longer alone. And the awareness of God rises in our mind. Right. So leave room for him, and you will find yourself so filled with the power that nothing will prevail against your peace. And this will be the test by which you recognize that you have understood. So as we practice going inside, whispering to the atonement, leaning toward God, saying, help me to see this correctly. I'm willing to see correctly. I'm willing to be peaceful. I'm willing that others be peaceful too. All of this will arise in your mind. Right? And you will know. You'll know that you made the right choice. You will know who your Father is. You will know who you are. Okay? And you will recognize that you now understand. All righty then. And then we teach for truth. All right? We bring the truth with us. And it comes through us just by joining, just by asking, help me to see. I'm willing to see correctly. And then it works through us. And we will be teaching for truth. Okay. Thank you all for being here. And until the next time, all right, connect with your friend, Jesus. All righty then. Bye now.